Hi.
Hello. I technically have pants on right now.
Technically,
Technically.
you're wearing my underwear. Hey, it's our house. We do what we want.
No rules!
I mean rules, but not concerning pants.
Okay.
No pants rules! So we watched another movie today.
Yeah, we watched another movie. 2 for 2. Going strong.
I mean, we're kind of 1 for 2.
We're like super non-committal, so I'm proud of us that we're
Yeah.
recording our second video now.
Yeah. We
got married. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
I thought we'd get,
Anyway.
something out
For
of it.
anybody who didn't know, because we didn't actually mention it ever on the
Oh,
channel.
yeah, we got married.
We got married. We're married now. Anyway, watched a movie.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Now that you know about all of our lives and we're caught up, we watched The Witches.
The Witches, a 1990 film by Jim Henson.
He was the executive producer, not director.
But it was a Jim Henson film.
Yes, it was a Jim Henson film. His studio worked on it.
Yes, and it was an adaptation of a book by Roald Dahl.
Yep.
And I think I saw it when I was little.
You think
Because of a specific thing that was said in this movie that I don't think was ever said in any other thing about witches that I've ever heard of. And I always kind of wondered where I got the from.
Oh.
So yeah, brief, like plot outline.
Okay, so this little boy is hanging out with his grandma, and his parents die in a horrific accident, like most things go. And and so then so grandma has to take care of this little boy, and
Which she's not very good at.
No, she's not very good because she lets him do whatever the hell he wants, and she tells him scary stories and makes him believe crazy things.
I mean, they're true though.
Yeah, they end up being true, but
It is
you're like,
true.
grandma's crazy.
Yeah.
Any hoozle. So we're back at grandma's place. Parents are dead. Life's going back to normal. Ends up grandma has a slight case of mild diabetes, so she can't eat sugar anymore. But the doctor tells him to go on vacation.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's the
what-
doctor's prescription. Stop eating sugar. Maybe cut down on the cigars because grandma is a badass bitch and she just smokes cigars all the time. And go on vacation by the shore.
So they go to the shore. And it ends up that there is a witch convention at the same hotel they're staying at.
Yeah.
And it's the same witch that cut off grandma's pinky, because she just doesn't have a pinky, in most of the shots, not all of them.
Yeah, at one point I wondered whether it was makeup or if the actress was actually missing her pinky finger. It's makeup, because like right after I asked that, there was a shot where she like puts her hand on his shoulder and she clearly has that pinky finger. So
Yeah, so...
not very consistent there.
No, but so they're at the hotel, and it ends up that the witches are gathering to kill more children, because children smell like dog poop to them,
Yeah.
and they hate children.
In this universe that this movie takes place in, witches, their whole bag is that they hate children and they want to kill them all.
Yep. So they decide to kill them by turning all the children into mice, because they have to use magic.
Oh yeah, the one witch was like, oh yeah, we'll poison them. And the like Grand High Witch was like, yeah, and you'll get caught. Witches only use magic. We only use magic. And then in the very next scene, she just pushes a baby in a stroller
Off
down
a
a hill.
cliff.
Like, that wasn't magic. Bitch, you just said we only use magic.
And the mom, like, saw her push the baby.
Yeah, she just kind of watched it.
Yeah.
Watched it happen.
And so our little hero, who, what's his name?
Luke.
Luke. Our little, which I think is his real name. I think his real
the
name
actor's name was Luke?
I think the actor's name is Lucas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
And-
it's one of those cases where, like, he'd get confused
Yeah.
if he used a different name.
Yeah, I guess. And so he gets turned into a mouse along with his friend that he met while he was eating all of the food at the tea.
His friend is a terrible child.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a horrible, detestable little brat.
He's just obnoxious.
Yeah. You
And his
kinda hate
parents
him.
are too, though.
What's
so.
his name? Bruno.
Bruno.
Yeah. Oh, his parents suck.
Yeah.
They're
so-
not just his parents, like, as people.
Yeah. And wasn't the dad in Titanic?
Oh God, I don't remember.
I think that I'm pretty sure.
I only watched Titanic for the sex in the car scene.
Oh, okay. So these two little mouse Lucas finds Grandma, and Grandma's like, "Well, we got to do something about it."
Oh yeah, by the way, the mice can talk.
Oh yeah, they can talk.
Like, not the regular mice, but the children that are turned into mice, they can talk.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit of a flaw in the witch's plan. Because the Grand High Witch's directive is kill all the children in England.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. And her plan is to turn them all into mice by feeding them these chocolates that have this magic potion in them that will turn them into mice.
Yeah. Because she's just throwing money at this problem.
Oh, she has so much money just in a trunk. In a gigantic Louis Vuitton trunk.
And So the witches end up getting turned into mice when little Luke Mouse dumps the potion that turned him into a mouse into their soup.
Yeah, conveniently, there was a soup that was being prepared for the witches' convention banquet, and only the witches were eating it, and all of the witches were eating it.
Hey, it was cress soup.
I've never had cress soup.
It's delicious.
We're talking like watercress?
Yes, watercress.
I'd eat it.
Mm-hmm. And so all the witches get turned into mice. The Grand High Witch gets slaughtered by Mr. Bean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rowan Atkinson's in this movie. And he's a standout.
Yeah. And so then little Luke. Yeah, Luke. I want to keep calling him Lucas now because we were talking about Luke Lucas. He puts a tag on the trunk full of money before they leave the hotel. So he's a little mouse.
Oh yeah, he's still a mouse.
He's still a mouse. So they're back at home at Grandma's house.
They got rid of the witches, but they didn't find a cure, so he's just a mouse.
And a Louis Vuitton trunk full of money shows up with an address book for all the witches in America. So he's like, let's go kill all those witches too, Grandma.
Yep.
And
they're like, yay, genocide.
But then the pissed off assistant witch that quits when the Grand Witch is a total bitch to her.
Yeah, she's just like mean to her.
Yeah,
and she's like, well, fuck you. I'm not going to be part of your club anymore.
And so she's a good witch now and comes back and turns him back into a little boy. And that's a overview of the movie.
That's the whole movie.
And that's the movie.
I mean, things happen.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about some of the more interesting points. But I mean, that's a good overview.
Yeah.
And we spent less than 10 minutes doing it this time. I think we're improving with this whole thing.
Well, the first time was the first one doing a movie review, so we're learning. We're doing this together.
I have to say that I have been proved wrong. I apologize because I just watched a delightful... What's the word?
A jovial romp.
A jovial romp that's about murdering children. It was a jovial romp. The jovialist of romps. It was fun. It was a fun movie. Our friend Josh told us that movie fucked him up as a kid. I can understand why.
Yeah. Because the Grand High Witch is... So the witches look like normal ladies... But they just wear wigs and masks, and they actually are these horrible, grotesque beasts underneath.
But only one of them ever takes off her mask because effects budget.
Yeah, because effects budget.
Like, they all have, like, bald caps on underneath wigs with, like, scabs and rashes all over their scalp.
And I actually wrote how bad the bald caps were, because there were just seams everywhere.
Yeah, the effects weren't very good. Those effects weren't very good. The makeup effects weren't very good.
No.
Except on the Grand High Witch, who takes off her mask, and they actually made her look pretty good.
Yeah, they made her look pretty good, and then the puppetry with the mice was very good.
Which you would expect from something that Jim Henson Studios was involved with.
But then also the actual live mouse stuff, they had trained mice, which was also really cool.
And that really impressed me, like I said, while we were watching it, because they could have gotten away with just using puppets. But they had trained live mice that did really well, and they pulled it off. I mean, they got a mouse to do what they wanted it to with a little glass bottle taped to its tail. If I was a mouse, I'd be pissed off about that and just wouldn't do anything.
Be like, screw you.
I'm not running up those steps with this bottle on my tail.
So backtracking, so the little boy's back at home with his grandma, and this weird lady walks up to him and just starts chatting him up. And it ends up that she's a witch. Yeah. And to try to get him to come out of the tree, she pulls a snake out of her purse, because little boys love snakes. But
that's her line.
But
little boys love snakes.
Little Luke ain't no fool. And his grandma taught him right to not trust old women with purple eyes.
Yeah, that was really the thing. It was, don't trust a woman with purple eyes.
And she also then pulls a candy bar. And then it gets a little weird, because you're like, okay. You're like, I'm just going to try and lure you with chocolate. At first she started coming off like a witch.
And then it was like, oh no, she's just a pedophile with purple eyes.
Also, the cover for the witch convention was that they were like the Royal Association for the Protection of Children.
It was the Royal Society for the Protection of Protection for the
protection
for the prevention of cruelty to children.
Yeah,
it's the RSPCA but for children.
And also, one of my biggest problems was that that little boy was allowed to walk into the hotel with his mice. And only after someone actually saw he had the mice, it was a problem.
It was the maid.
It was the maid that Mr. Bean was fucking.
Yeah, Mr. Bean was totally fucking that maid. Mr. Bean was the hotel manager.
Yeah, Mr. Bean was the hotel manager. Which, one of those things that just kind of...
He's not Mr. Bean. Rowan Atkinson was the hotel manager. Mr. Bean. He speaks in this movie.
Did not get that as a child at all.
No, I would not have gotten that. Mm-mm. But, like, they come out of a storage room, and her hair is all tousled, and he's like, you can take the rest of the day off, and she kisses him and then straightens up and is like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And you're like, oh, they fucking. And then she sees a mouse, and she freaks out, and this one other maid is like, is she sober? And he's like, of course she's sober. I've been with her all afternoon. I mean, like, they weren't even that subtle about it. But no. Kids wouldn't get it.
No, kids would not get it. She blew up a witch the Grand Witch blew up a witch with laser beam eyes after she was like, how in the hell is this is this gonna work? She's like,
she questions the plan of killing all of the children in Britain, which, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's lofty goal. That's a big ask.
Mm-hmm.
And she just gets pissed off, says some bad rhymes, because it's a movie about witches for children, and they do that. And just incinerates her with laser beams.
Yeah. The plan, though, when they go to poison the witches, though, is pretty cute. Because there's, like, this fun scene where the mouse is hiding in a bunch of different stuff, and he has a bunch of close calls.
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen of the hotel.
So, like, he's hiding in, like, the French fry tub before the fries are fried. Mm-hmm. And, like, the cook is grabbing handfuls of these potatoes and throwing them in the fryer and putting it down, and you're like, he could have grabbed the mouse.
And then he gets it in the soup, and the cook that's making the soup is also a witch.
Yeah.
And so she gets her mouth all up on that spoon that she uses to... She's like, ah!
The grandma smuggles Mouse Luke into the kitchen, and he's got a bottle of the formula that the witches are using to turn people into mice, and they're like, there's this convenient pot of soup that literally all of the witches and nobody but the witches are going to eat. So let's dump a bottle of this stuff in there, and it's 500 doses. They're very, very clear about that. That it's 500 doses of this stuff. And you only need 1 dose for it to work, but if you want it to work immediately, you needed 5. They were also very clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was enough of this stuff in there that they would all, like, start immediately turning into mice, which they do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, like, another close call where Bruno's dad is about to eat the soup
because he's an asshole. Because
he's a terrible asshole.
Because he's like, I want what they're having.
Yeah, and the Rowan Atkinson, the hotel manager, is like, well, sir, that soup was made specifically for this other party, and they're the only ones that get to eat it because it was made for them. You got the soup that's actually on the menu. Have a good night. And he's like, no, fuck you. Take this soup back. I don't like it. You can tell the cook to bring me some of that soup. Good day, sir. And it's like, you're a prick.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized, the little mice children realized at the last second, oh no, Bruno's dad's about to eat the soup and it turned into a mouse. And I'm like, fuck it, let him.
Yeah.
He deserves it. He's an asshole.
Yeah, and then, but then the parents of Bruno, because Grandma keeps trying to tell them that their son has been turned into a mouse, and the first time they're like, she's crazy, and then she dumps the soup out onto the table so he won't turn into a mouse, and at that point they're like, oh, I guess our son did turn into a mouse.
Yeah, like he runs out onto the table from Grandma's purse, and he's like, no, Mom and Dad, it is me. I'm your terrible, horrible son. I'm a shitty child, but now I'm a mouse. Sorry, I really hated most of the characters in this. Oh, man. They're so unlikable.
Yeah.
But that doesn't detract from the movie at all. Like, you kind of love to hate them.
Yeah, you're supposed to hate most of them.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to like Bruno.
No.
You're not supposed to like Bruno.
I mean, Bruno actually turns out to be a pretty decent kid, I guess, but he doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah, he's a completely secondary character.
He doesn't do anything but be a shitty, spoiled kid.
Yeah.
The whole movie.
And he was
sometimes he's also a mouse.
And like the build up for his character was he's a fat kid who likes to eat. So the witches were able to give him the poisoned chocolate because she was like, hey, fat kid, you want a candy bar? And he's like, yeah. And then she's like, I got more if you show up here later. He's like, that's a great idea.
Show up to our conference room at this time exactly, because that's the time that he was going to change, because she only gave him one dose of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was like, what, 2 hours?
Yeah.
To the second.
To the second.
To the second, 2 hours after you eat this, you turn into a mouse. Unless you get 5 doses, then it works immediately. That was consistent in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're very clear about that, and it was very consistent. Other things in the lore of this movie are very not consistent. For example, one of the few things that Grandma tells Luke about at the beginning of the movie, before his parents are horribly killed in an accident, is that witches don't have toes. And their feet end in squared off blocks, which is the thing that I remember from when I was a kid, hearing somebody say that. And I don't think that's a thing about witches that, like, is in the folklore. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I had to have at least seen that part of this movie when I was a kid, but I don't remember most of it. But when they're in the conference room, oh, and she also says they don't wear fancy shoes. Mm-hmm. They just wear plain, sensible shoes, because otherwise it would hurt their feet, because they just end in a block instead of toes. When they're in the conference room, the movie makes a point of having the Grand High Witch say, you can now take off your shoes, because they were disguising themselves as this association for, like, preventing cruelty to children, but they're actually witches. So after everybody else is out of the room, she's like, you can take your wigs off, you can take your shoes off, get comfortable. They take off their shoes, and it shows close-ups of their feet. And they all have toes.
They're all just wiggling their toes.
They're wiggling them! I just wiggled my toes for emphasis. It's not visible or anything.
No.
They're wiggling their toes, and you're like, well, that's one of the things that the movie specifically said wasn't a thing.
As far as the whole taking your shoes off thing, as a woman of high society, you're kind of expected to wear heels.
Right,
So
sure.
that would be uncomfortable for the witches.
Yeah.
And so are the wigs, because they're like, if you see a lady walking around scratching her head, that
Right.
means that she's wearing a wig, and she's a witch.
Yeah, because wigs give witches terrible scalp rash, which Grandma explains and then says, do you know what scalp rash is? And he's like, no. And she's like, it's a fucking rash on your scalp. Damn you, stupid. She doesn't actually say it like that, but
No,
basically...
she does light up a cigar, so...
While
that
she's
was-
explaining it, she lights up a half-smoked cigar that she saved from earlier. Yeah, no, it's just I can understand. Hey, everybody, you can kick your shoes off. We're amongst friends now.
Oh, but the toe
But, like,
wiggling.
toe wiggling, specifically showing close-up shots of everybody's feet while they take their shoes off and afterwards. And it's like, okay, they want to emphasize the feet, but there was a weird thing about witches' feet that they talked about earlier, and it's not fucking in the movie.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
Also,
I am a Star Trek fan. Everything has to fit together. Star Trek has retconned so much shit just to appease the fans because we're all anal retentive OCD nutcase nerds.
Mm-hmm.
So this needs to make sense and it doesn't, and it fucks with me.
Also, while all the witches have their wigs off, they're all of a sudden all men.
Yes.
To make them as ugly as possible.
In that scene where they're having their meeting, almost all of the witches that are depicted are men, and one of them is Michael Palin from Monty Python. And I picked him out even though he was wearing a whole bunch of special effects makeup. I was like, that was Michael Palin. Because I've seen Michael Palin in drag a lot. He was in Monty Python. Yeah, I was like, that was Michael Palin, wasn't it? And I Googled it while the movie was on. I'm like, yeah, it was. Proud of myself.
Yeah. But the little mouse boy saves the day and gets to return to Grandma. And what my first question after he got turned back, though, was, are they still going to go to America and kill all the witches?
Which is not addressed.
Which is not addressed.
But they actually did make solid plans, because they have the book with all the names and addresses of all the witches in America.
And a fuck ton of money.
Which, another thing that's weird is that Luke already had an American accent.
Yeah, he was from America.
He was from America. His mother was from...
Norway.
No, I don't think so, because I think she was supposed to be German. I think they were supposed to be in Germany when they were filming in Norway.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
Like, I think it was supposed to be set in... Like, they weren't, like, supposed to be filming in Germany when they were actually filming in Norway.
Yeah, no.
Somebody was being a naughty production assistant got the wrong tickets. Yeah, because they go to her door to let her know that the parents were killed in an accident.
Yeah.
And they refer to her as Frau.
Oh,
okay. I don't
okay.
think that's something that you do in Norway.
No, that's a German thing.
Yeah. Or maybe she's just German and they were in Norway. But whatever. But I guess they were just living with her in Europe for some reason.
They were on vacation visiting Grandma in Europe.
Oh, okay.
And then
she decides to move... After the parents died, she decides to move with Luke to England.
Because she has a house there.
Because she just happens to have a house
his grandma's
there.
Loaded.
Yeah. Grandma is apparently super duper rich, even though she lives in, like... it's an okay house in the first part of the movie when they're in indiscriminate...
But they could afford to take...
Indeterminate European country.
But they could afford to take this nice vacation at this nice hotel at the beach. So, and she has a second house. So, yeah, Grandma was rich.
Apparently, but then she was so excited when she got the trunk full of money.
Well, she probably spent all of her money building that setup for that mouse to get around the house.
At the end of the movie, before this trunk shows up, she's living in her house in England with Luke, the mouse, and has this ridiculous system of, like, toy trains and, like... Tubing going around the house for him to run around in. Sure. Whatever. Also, I think that... Because there's, like, this little... like toy building next to Grandma's bed, and that's what Luke sleeps in. Mm-hmm. And he's got a little tiny mouse bed in there.
It's adorable.
It's adorable. I'm pretty sure that was a spray painted Ghostbusters playset.
It did look
I think it was the firehouse from the Ghostbusters playset, and I think they spray painted it to make it look different and just stuck it on set.
Yeah, but also when he changed, he was completely nude because he was a mouse.
Okay, so yeah, at the end of the movie. Yeah, the witch that was mad at the other witches who didn't eat the soup because she quit being a witch, I guess, even though she still has magic powers and shit. From standing outside the house while he's sleeping in bed in his Ghostbusters playset, shoots like a weird magic laser beam into the house and turns him back into a boy while he's still in the thing. So he, like, gets big and, like, bursts out of this thing and flies through the air. But He is completely
His dick.
nude. You can, like, see his junk.
There's like a tasteful blur on his groin.
But you can, like, tell that he wasn't wearing anything over his dick.
Yeah.
Like, that was awkward.
Yeah.
And then she, like, magics his glasses up to him, and they just appear on his face.
And then he has little mice. So she gives him his mice back.
Yeah, he had pet mice in the movie. Which, that doesn't really make sense either. Like, it makes sense to have pet mice, but there was no reason for him to have pet mice.
No, absolutely no reason. They didn't help him accomplish anything.
No.
The only thing that we learned was he couldn't talk to them even though he was a mouse. Because they were real mice and he was a child mouse.
So maybe they wrote those mice into the movie just to establish the fact that no, they didn't get turned into regular mice, and regular mice can't talk, and it's not only the mice that can understand each other, these are magic children mice, so they can talk like humans, they're just mice.
I guess.
I think we would have gotten that when they showed up to Grandma's room and she could understand them.
Yeah.
So...
But it's a really fun movie.
It's a fun movie. It's for kids.
Yeah, it's for kids.
Kids aren't gonna pick out the plot holes that I did, although kids would notice. They're like, okay, I remember she said that witches don't have toes. Because she got graphic about what it actually was like, and it's kind of a disturbing visual image.
Yeah.
And that's why I remember it from when I was a kid. But the kids would remember that and be like, okay, I was disturbed by this image, and then they took off their shoes and I was bracing myself to see this fucked up special effect, and it didn't happen. They just have normal toes.
Yeah. But
they wouldn't pick up on the dirty humor either.
No, not at all. It was very subtle. Like we said, we didn't get it.
It wasn't subtle.
It was subtle for kids.
It wasn't subtle. It was just something that kids wouldn't understand.
Hey,
kids just don't understand.
I probably have watched that movie while I was a teenager and still didn't get it.
We need to work this into every episode of this, but kids are fucking dumb.
Yeah, no, if I was a witch, I'd try and kill children, too. I would eat them, though. Clown style.
We're going to make a callback to the previous movie every time, too?
No, maybe.
What are we going to watch next that we could make a callback to The Witches?
I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen.
All right.
But go check it out. We hope that you enjoyed our review and summary. And we're not sure what we're going to watch next. But tomorrow's video will be up tomorrow.
And by the way, we're not sure which movie we're going to watch next, but we did pick out 13 movies for this.
Yeah, we're not totally unprepared.
Right. So we know... There was the other movie about clowns. Casey didn't want to watch that one right away because then we'd have 2 clown movies.
I didn't want to clown you guys out. Didn't want to clown you out.
Dude, I'm so clowned out right now.
I'm clowning out with my crazy colored hair.
Yeah. If we had better lighting, it would be more apparent.
Yeah. It's all the colors right now. It's crazy. But thanks for joining us. Have a good night, and we will see you tomorrow.
Or have a good day.
Okay.
If you're watching it in the daytime.
Yeah. Have a good life.
Have a good everything.
Okay, Bob Ross.